Folks, ladies and gentlemen, there are Siyyum. The Siyyum are up here, okay? Please remind people when they come in that the Siyyum are up on the. All right, somebody asked David a question so we can deduct the miles, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, there are Siyyum. Please remind everybody when they come in that the Siyyum are up here in the front, okay? Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We welcome you all. We're glad to see you all. Page 18. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasech v'ivin Eloheinu bein yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam shetzanei goy. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam shetzanei aved. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam abisha armim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam atir asarim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam zokei kfufim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam makar salamayim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam shetzadek ol tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam asher achim zedek gaver. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam azeir b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam ateir b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein li ohev koach. Unenu hayom chol yom l'chenu hezed rachamim beinecha uveikol chasadim tovim Baruch atah Adonai gamel chasadim tovim li'amo Yisrael. Bottom 26. Ashrenu matov chelkenu manim gorelenu mayafa yerushatenu. Ashrenu shnachtem ashkim arivim erevok erevim hamayim b'chol yom. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai echad. Kadesh Shimcha Makshis Mecha V'Kadesh Shimcha Mecha V'Shuach Tarim B'Tagi Karneinu Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh Shimcha B'Rabim. Page 48, Rabbi Yishmael Omer. John? Let's see if there's anybody in the hallway of the parking lot. We're going. Let's see if there's anybody in the hallway of the parking lot. Yersam Efonecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Tenu Shebana Beit HaMikdash v'Hermin v'Tin Chalkim v'Tortecha v'Sham Navcha B'Ira K'Melo Mokshanim Kadmoniot. We continue on page 54. Mis Mashir Chanukata Baila David, and Hanai Kitali Tani, Vossamakta Baila Adonai Lohashua Telech. Zemala Hasida, Vahodu Zeka Kacho, Kibiapu, by Michel. A Fachmis Belilmach, Holy Bitakazi, Vitazani Simcha, the Man, you below Yidom, Adonai Elohai, Lilamodeka. Page 58. Baruch Shamar V'Haya Olam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hazev Reshit, Baruch Mevi Yosef, Baruch Hazev Mekayim, Baruch Meshalim Sokat Eloria, Baruch Hazev Sekol, Baruch Shabbat. Yachid Chayolami, Melech Meshabach, Mordesh Mogadol, Baruch Adonai, Melech Mehulal, Batish Bachod. Friends, we are seated on page 60. Hodul Adonai Kirib Shmo, Hodia V'Meladav, Shirlo, Zemrlo, Shechum B'chol Nevodav, Hitlo B'Shem Kacho, Yishmach V'Nevodav. Yikol Elohim Elohim, Varanai Shemayim Asa, Halil Lefanav, Halil Hamo, Havul Adonai Shechadamim, Havul Adonai, Havul Adonai, Kavod Shemo, Zumin Chava Lefanav. Ramu Adonai Eloheinu V'Shakul L'Hadam Raglav Kadoshu, Ramu Adonai Eloheinu V'Shakul Har Kadsho, Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu, V'Hu Rachamim V'Lo Yashchid V'Lo Shiva Povli Yekol Chamato. Adonai Tzivot Umanim Iskavlanu V'Sel Adonai Tzivot Achayu Damotei Yakbach, Adonai Hoshia Melech Yaneinu V'Yom Kareinu. Hoshia Mechum V'Rachet Nachalatecha U'Vrei Menaseh Marolam Mavshin Adonai Adonai Hu Yivachsel. Amen Menachas Decha V'Yishach. Vani B'Chad B'Tach Ki Yagia Li Yishuatecha Ashir Adonai Ki Gamal Elohai Mizmor L'Toda Hari L'Adonai Kol Arz V'Zivcha. Yitovan Elam Chazdo V'Yador V'Ador Emunato Yichvad Elam Yismach Adonai B'Muasa. V'Hurachom Yichon V'Lo Yashchid V'Yrbal Shiva Po V'Lo Ya'ir Kol Chamato Adonai Hoshia Melech Yaneinu V'Yom Kareinu. 66 Ashrei. Ashrei Yoshevetecha Chasela. Dor L'Doi Shabach Ma'asecha U'Kvartech Yagid V'Adag V'Rodech V'Dir V'Degasecha V'Zimzantecha So when I look over, I come over. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, nafshi Adonai, Adonai v'chayai, azam Adonai. Yimloch Adonai li'olam Elohai Yikzion l'dovador, hallelujah. Hallelujah, titov zamlan. Magid Devarav Yaakov, Chukav Mishpatav Yisrael, Vasachein L'chol Goy, Mishpatim Bal Yadum, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, et Adonai Hashem, hallelujah, Ramim, hallelujah, kol mochav, kol tzavav. Hashem Shemayim, Amayim, Hashem Shemayim, hallelujah, Shemayim. Yehallelu Hashem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodol eretz Shemayim, v'yarim keren li'amot, hilal l'chol chasidav, lifnei Yisrael karvo, hallelujah. Hallelujah, Hashem l'ashir chadash, t'lo b'asidim Yisrael. L'shomachem v'zikim v'nichvadim b'chavli barzel, l'haso b'hem mishkat katuv, harahu l'chol chasidav, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, el b'kod shel l'berkiru zel, l'gurutav, l'gurgulot. Hallelujah, tzitzel hashema, hallelujah, tzitzel hashema, kol anashemat hallelujah, hallelujah, kol anashemat hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai le'olam amen v'amen, baruch Matzion v'shochein yishon hallelujah, baruch Adonai melech Yisrael tzedem v'vado, v'baruch Shem Chadol le'olam v'yamalek v'alek lars amen v'amen. V'yivarech David and baruch Adonai. Atahu Adonai Elohim asher b'chad b'Avraham v'osei to me orkazdim v'samta shemo Avraham u'matzatet levavo ne'eman lefanecha v'charot imo habrit latet eretz naniach iti hemere p'rizei yivzei. Vayamachat lifnehem vayover b'toch hayam b'yabashav yorafehem yishlach tabim tzolot k'mo even v'mayim azim vayasho Adonai vayamahu et Yisrael Mitzrayim v'yar Yisrael Mitzrayim metasvat hayam v'yar Yisrael hagadol asher sadonai b'Mitzrayim v'yirumat Adonai v'yaminu b'Adonai of Moshe Avdo Az Yashir Moshe v'nei Yisrael asher zot Adonai v'yamor asher l'nai gogos v'srach v'ravoy yamazib v'tzim v'shavit. Adonai Mloch Li'olam V'Oed, Adonai Mloch Li'olam V'Oed. Ki l'Adonai HaMelucha Moshe B'Goyim V'Elu Moshe B'Hartzin L'Shpot Et Torisa V'Yitel Adonai HaMelucha V'Yadonai L'Melech Al Kol Ha'aretz V'Yamahu Yednoi Echad U'Shmo Echad. Friends, we are going to continue service on page 82.
Yishabach Shimcha Lad Malkeinu. Baruch Atadonai El Melech Adonai Shbachod El Hados Adonai Chlod Habacher B'Shib Zimra Melech El Chei Olamim Baruch Atadonai Melech Yezer Kosher Seshon Versakol Hamir Kulam Havim, Kulam Barim, Kulam Birim, Kulam Mosim, Mimar, Son Kanam, Kulam Potkim, Esmi, Shav Sahara, Bashirab Zimra, Vorchim, Shabachim, Forim Maritzim, Makdishim, Mam Lichim, Hashem Hill and Belchakad of the Kojahu, Bukhlam Makablim Alayhim, Al Mokushma Mizeh, the Nodim Shuzelazel, Hakshis Liotzer Menachas Ruach, Safav Jakulam Kiachad, Onim Yamrim Vira, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvod, Molchar Tzvodo, Vahofanim Chasha Kodesh, Barash Kadam Sasim Velatz Rafim, Limatam Shapchim Yamrim, Baruch Adonai, Mim, come on. Leorach Nemitin Melchagam, it's immersive sin. Come where let's ever get him go. Or Chadash Atzion Tayir, Veniskech Ulanam Heraliero, Baruch Adonai, Yotzer, Hamiyaros, Vahinu Shalom Yabakam Fataretz, Talichenu Kamisartsenu, Kielpish Uzata, Van Vacharta, Mikalam Valashon, the Rav Tunnel, Shulahagad Salabi Ahmed, Lahada Lachol Echabiava, Baruch Adonai, Abacherba Israel, Biahava, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Bahasai and Cholok Adonai Elohechem Emes. Got some Nes. Can it's here coming you the Dorvator. Mishma Kayami Chison Makosofi Messiah Kayamas. Ruchayamim and Lil Adobe Elamim. All of Tony Elenu, all Bonenu, Tenevi, all Cultura, there is well, but all our Shimmer. Messim and Hokuavar, MS Shots on Tenu. Malkinu Melchavatenu, go Elenu, go Tenu. It's Renu Turshu Tenu, Potenu Masilenu Elam Shemecha, in Elohim Zulatecha, as MS Shots on Brachos varos meliam mechalam aravim nitzagad aravim shvilkayim ozerim motziasim rufadanavim ozer dalim eliashol love tilal tilal yon baruchim varach Moshe b'nei Yisrael l'chon shira simcha rabba v'imru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh, narati lodo seifelem. Shirat sharacha, shipru gilim lishvaso ad hayam, yachad kulam hoduvim lichu v'yamru, Adonai yimloch li'olam v'ed, Tzur Yisrael, kum abi Ezrat Yisrael, ufteichinu mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael, go aleinu Adonai tzvo shemo, Kiddush Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai kol Yisrael.
This is a sign of the times. For those who are joining us via live stream, we welcome you this morning. We're just waiting for one or two people to arrive before we continue on with the service. And for those on live stream, if you got the announcement, if you could just wave to me so I can know that you heard it. Thanks everyone for your patience. Page 98, would you all please rise as Richard leads us in the Chazar Hashatz, the repetition of the Amidah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Eloheinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Hoyel HaGadol HaGibor HaNorel Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'nei HaKol V'Zacher Chesed Avod U'Mevi Goel V'Vehem L'man Shemo V'Yava Melech Hazer Mashiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Atah Gibor L'Olam Adonai Mechayim Eitim Atah Roli Hoshia Mashi Baruch Mordech Geshem B'chach Kechayim Chesed Mechayim Eitim Brachim Rabim Somech L'Chim B'Fechel Matir Sarim U'Mekayim Manatol Shnei Afar Micha Melcha Bal Kavrotu Melach Melech Memid Mechayim Etzmich Yeshua B'nei Aman Atol Chayot Meitim Baruch atah Adonai B'chayei HaMeitim
Amen. Nekadesh Olam Kishem Shema Zevi Amar.
Nekadesh Shema B'Olam Kishem Shema Tishem Otav B'Shvim Aram Kakatov Yanavi Achav Akarel Zevi Amar
Kadosh, Kadosh,
Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh, Adonai Tzvaot, Melchers Gadol, Limosam, Baruch Yameru.
Baruch Adonai Mim Kamo.
Kamov, Drei Kochel Ketuv Limor.
Baruch Adonai Le'olam Elohai Yitzchak L'Olam Adonai Hallelujah.
L'Dor V'Adonai Gad Lecha, U'Lenetzach Nitzachim Kiddush Nakdish, Shivchach Eloheinu Pinu Lo Yishalem V'Ed, Ki Yomel Kadosh Gadata, Baruch Adonai, Hoyel HaKadosh. Atoch Kadosh, Shemel V'Vina, Chanuk Bein Haskell, Baruch Adonai, Chanein Hadad, Hashivenu Abinu Torah V'Keinu Malkin Lavatecha, Pasirenu B'Shuva, Shalem L'Chanecha, Baruch Adonai, Harotzeh B'Shuva, Slach Lanu Abinu Ki Chatanu Machal Lanu Malkin Kivashanu, Ki Machlev V'Salachat, Baruch Adonai, Chananun Harbe L'Sloach, Rei V'Rem Yenu V'Rav V'Venu V'Galenu Me'er Lon Shemecha, Ki Goel Chazakat, Baruch Adonai, Goel Yisrael, Refainu and Refei Hoshin V'In Mashiach, Kislisenu Ata, V'Alevrafo L'Shlem L'Chalakatenu, Ki El Melech, Rofei V'Neman Rochaman Ata, Baruch Adonai, Rofei Chalei Amal Yisrael, Baruch Aleinu Adonai Eloheinu Es Hazos, V'Kamini L'Tova, Tova, Talamot L'Frocha, Apnei Hodamov, Sabenu T'vecha, Baruch Shnezenu, Kashim HaTavot, Baruch Adonai, Baruch Hashanim, Tkabah Shofar Golosenu, V'Senu V'Sonei, Tkabah Golosenu, V'Kaptenu Yetzim Revakan Fazaretz, Baruch Adonai, Mekabeit, Zinchayim Yisrael, Hashu Shenu V'Kareshanu, V'Yetenu Chpat Chila, V'Asem Menigan Me'anacham, Alech Aleinu Atorah Levadcha V'Chesed Rachamim, Tzadkenu B'Mishpat, Baruch Adonai, Melech Al-Heiv, Tzedakah Mishpat, V'Mal Shema Tikva, V'Chol Yishma Keragat Haved, V'Chol Evecha Meherik Hareitzu V'Hazim Mehera, Ta'aker Shvaber, Tachmi V'Tachmi Abraham Yameinu, Baruch Adonai, Shaver Avim, Achmei Azedim, Al HaTzadikim HaChasidim, Zal Jnei Yachav Beis Yisrael, V'Fleta Sofreim, Yalgir Hetzer V'Yoleinu, Yemen Racham Echad Eloheinu, V'Tein Socher Tov L'Chol V'Shimcha B'Yamet, V'Simcha Kenu Imohem L'Yolam, V'Lo Nivosh, Kivcha V'Tachnu, Baruch Adonai, Mishanu Tzach L'Tzadikim. V'Lerushalayim Yochav Racham Tashu, V'Tishkan B'Chot Hashir Dibarta, V'nei Ata B'Karab Yameinu V'Yan Olam, V'Chesed David Mehera Tachin, Baruch Adonai, V'nei Yerushalayim, Esemach David Alta V'Hera Tasmiach V'Karno V'Torim Shuatecha, Kilishimcha Kivinu Kol Hayom, Baruch Adonai, Matzmiach Keren Yeshua, Shema Kolenu Eloheinu Chesroch Malenu, Kabarach Miratzon Tivosenu, Kior Shomei Tivos V'Tachmata, U'Molav Ma'Venach Malkenu Kermal Tishivenu, Kiyato Shomei Tivos Amcho Yisrael V'Rachamim, Baruch Adonai, Shemei Tfilah.
Amen.
Ritzed Eloheinu Melcho Yisrael Zasam, V'Yoshev Esavadrol V'Ritzecha, V'Sheg Yisrael Zasam, V'Havel Kol Paratzon, Zilor Son Tamir Vadas Yisrael Amecha, V'Techazenu Inem Shuchos Yam Rachamim, Baruch Adonai, Amachazir Shchenasol Etzion.
Modim Anachnu La.
Merchim Klosam and Dacham Yolam Kivinu Lach. Yal Kol Mitzrach Shem Kol Makenu Tamid Yolam Voed. Chol Chamid Kusela V'Halom Shucham Yimed. Voyel Shus Henry Sela Baruch Adonai. Atov Shimcha Olchan Hodos. Siyyum Shalom Tavrach Baruchim Asem Aleinu V'Kosar Almecha. Baruchinu Avinu Kulan Giach Lav Yerpanecha. Ki Yerpanecha Natat Alanu Adonai Leinu. Torah Chaim Yavs Chesed Tzedakah V'Racha V'Racha V'Mchayim V'Shalom. V'Tavinech L'Varach Yisrael Yisrael B'Chosel V'Shol V'Shalomecha. Baruch Adonai. Baruch Yisrael Yisrael B'Shalom.
Friends, there is no Tachanan during the month of Nisan. We continue with the Chatzi Kaddish, followed by Ashrei on 150.
Yitkara Yitkara Shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yalmad V'Rechi Ritzeh V'Luch Malchatei B'Chaychanu B'Yamechanu B'Chayducha Beit Yisrael Ba'akol B'Zman Kariv V'Imru.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Le'omei Omaya Yitbarach.
Shabbat with Parvi from Minan Sevit, Darby, Alash, Med Kudasha,
Rechu.
Sashirata, Tifrata, Nakamata, Da Amiram Bioma, Vimru,
Amen.
Ashray Shabbat, Tony, hallelujah. Talk Kadosh Shevti Lat Yisrael, V'Karel Zazev Yamar.
Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot Malachot Vado.
Batisan Urach Leshma Charai Kol Rosh Gadol.
Baruch Adonai Mim Kamo.
Richi Krodonoi Meser Beshchinte Adonai Yamloch Li'olam Va'ed Adonai Machazokim Li'olam Va'asei Maya. V'yivtzcho v'yadet Shemcha Kil Safter Shachar Adonai Adonai Chavetz Manzitko Yagdiel Sarah V'yadir Yitkara v'yikara Shemei Rabbah
Amen.
Yalmod v'chir Resev Malchutei B'chayachon U'mimachon V'chayid Chavei Yisrael Ba'agal V'zman Kariv Yimru
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach. Olam Olam Maya Yiporach.
V'shabach v'par v'trom v'yidan sevit hadar v'yadalev v'halash medukudasha
Rechu.
Shirata tushrata v'nechamata da'amim riyavama v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Kabel salson rason Chavei Yisrael kadam avuhundu v'shmaya v'imru
Amen.
Hey shalom rabbi shmaya v'chaim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru
Amen.
Shalom v'imru mava yaseh shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru
Amen.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol Latei gedula yotzer breshit Shelo asanu kegoye haratzot V'lo samanu k'mishpuchot ha'adama Shelo sam chalkenu kohem V'gohar aleinu v'chol hamanam V'anachnu korim U'mishtachavim modim Lifnei melech Alchei hamlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sheshema Mishunu
V'nemar v'hayu Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shmo echad. Mourner's Kaddish Yikadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah v'yalma divarachi rutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayachonu v'yomeichonu v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agola uvizman kor'i v'yimeru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach la'olam u'lomei omaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei d'kudsha b'richu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran b'yolma v'yimeru Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shmaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru Amen. Osa shalom v'mramav v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru Amen.
Amen.
165 on the bottom of the page. I'm sorry, 164, 165, the Psalm for Wednesday. Hayom Yom Shabbat Shabo Hayu Halaveim Amir Mikdash.
Chunarana Aladai, Nuri Yisrael Shenu, Nikam Mafon Fatad of Israel and Arielo, Kiel Gadol Adonai, Umelech Gadol, Al Kol Elohim.
Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash Shmerabah,
Amen.
V'yalma Divrach Yerutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yamechon, V'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agola, U'vizman Kor'i, V'yimru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach, La'olam U'lomei Omaya. V'yit Barach, V'yit Tabach, V'yit Po'ar, V'yit Ramam, V'yit Nasei, V'yit Adar, V'yit Ale, V'yit Halal, Shmeid Kudsha Brichu, Li'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbachata V'nechemata, Damiran B'olma V'yimru Amen. Yehei Shlamo Rabba Min Shmaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. O Seshalom Imramav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. We continue now on 328, followed by the Kaddish D'Rabbanan. Kaddish D'Rabbanan. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash, Shmei Rabbah, B'olma Divrach Yerutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agola u'vizman kor'i v'yimru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach la'olam u'lomei omaya. Yit Barach v'yishtabach v'yit Po'ar v'yit Ramam v'yit Nasei, v'yit Adar v'yit Ale v'yit Halal, Shmeid Kudsha Brichu, Li'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbachata v'nechemata, Damiran b'olma v'yimru Amen. Al Yisrael, V'al Rabbanan, V'al Talmidei Hon, V'al Kol Talmidei Hon, V'al Kol Man Do'iskim V'yoraita, Diviat Rahadain V'diva Chol Atar V'yatar, Yehei L'chon L'chon Shamo Rabba, Hina V'hisa V'rachamin, V'chayin Arichin V'zonu V'vichei, For Kanam Min Kadam V'hon V'shmaya, V'ara V'yimru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shmaya, V'chayim Tovim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. O Seshalom Imramav, Barachamav Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yimaru Amen. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We welcome everybody. We're glad to have everybody with us this morning. Thank you for joining with us. Folks, please remember that before we get into the short Siyyum this morning, I want to remind you of two very important reminders. One, we're davening tonight at 6:15 p.m. on Zoom. We'll have Mincha at 6:15 on Zoom. Please be with us for the brief Mincha service before Pesach. And number two, it's John Levison's birthday. So we're coming out of Egypt and celebrating John's birthday today. Really? What? Happy birthday, Yom Huledet Sameach. John, we thank you for everything you do for the synagogue. We truly do. So friends, with your permission, we're going to take a few minutes to study this morning. For many years, as you may recall, I used to teach a Masechet, a tractate, a section of Mishnah for our Siyyum for Erev Pesach. And last year, we switched it up a little bit, and I taught a section from the Shulchan Aruch. People liked it. And luckily for me, there are literally thousands of sections of the Shulchan Aruch, so it's going to keep us busy until retirement and beyond. Last year, I taught a section from the Shulchan Aruch about the laws of saying and not saying Mashiv HaRuach Min HaGashem, the laws about saying the various prayer for rain in the Amidah, or stopping the prayer for rain in Amidah, which of course is one of the highlights of the Chazan's repetition of the Amidah tomorrow morning, which of course is a shameless plug for you all to be here tomorrow morning at 9:30 to participate in the davening, as the Chazan will be changing the Nusach for the spring and the fall, refraining from the blessings for rain, because in Israel this is not the rainy season. Today I want to do something a little different, and for this I hope that you'll keep the... David, stay a few minutes. All right? Stay a few minutes if you can. David. We're going to be... and it may be helpful to you to keep your Art Scroll Siddur with you for this section. because today we're going to be studying a section of the Shulchan Aruch, section 51, from the first section of the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch is made up of 4 sections. Shulchan Aruch, the classic code of Jewish law, made up of a section called Orach Chaim, which is the daily laws of, which are the laws of that most Jews will observe most of the time. Prayer, holidays, basic observances. Section number 2, Yoredeya, which contains, among other things, the laws of kashrut. Even HaEzer, family law. And number 4, Choshen HaMishpat, we might consider business law. Historically, rabbis received their ordination when they could demonstrate mastery over the first 2 sections of the Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim and Yoredeya. So we're going to be studying briefly this morning a section from Orach Chaim, the first section number 51, and it's called Dinei Tefillah Min Baruch Shamar Ad Yishtabach. The laws of prayer that guide our observances from the prayer Baruch She'amar until the prayer Yishtabach. Everybody with me so far? You say, well, that's a strange section for a law code. No, because there are a variety of laws that guide this section of the service. Now, I want you to imagine going back over 1,000 years. There's no doubt that the early collections of prayers were much thinner than the collections of prayers that we call Siyyum today. Certain prayers were added to them over the years. And it's interesting because when the pandemic became a reality, and we had to make some changes in the services to make them shorter and briefer so that we could be back in the building, one of the things that Cantor Weiss and I did is we thought about the way that prayer services were conducted long ago, before many of the additions to the prayers that we are familiar with today that do add length to the service were added to the service. And we based ourselves to some degree on those rulings and practices from times in the past. So I want you to imagine a time when the Pesukei Zimra service, the early part of the service, began with what we call the Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings, and then very quickly, as opposed to what we have today, which we have a variety of inserts, moved quickly from there to the prayer we are familiar with, Baruch She'amar. Okay? In our Sidurim, for those who have it, Baruch She'amar is on page 58. And we're going to take about 10 minutes this morning or so and just review some of the laws. There are 9 various sections. There are 9 subparagraphs in chapter 51 of Orach Chaim and the Shulchan Aruch. And we're going to just briefly go through some of them. And I chose this one because my sense is that many of the folks who come to the morning Minyan or have been to morning Minyan, when I make reference to them, or the Shulchan Aruch makes reference to these ideas, they'll be somewhat familiar to you. And I want you to understand their legal basis and how some of the practices that you see that you may never have thought about are actually enshrined in law and written down in many places, but especially the Shulchan Aruch. Okay. So we begin with we begin with the following. Omrim Baruch Shamar Kodem Pesukei Zimra V'Yishtabach Acharehem. Literally, we begin with the words that we say the blessing Baruch Shamar before Pesukei Zimra. Now, what does that mean? We normally think of Baruch Shamar as the beginning of the section known as Pesukei Zimra. But according to the Shulchan Aruch, it's Baruch She'amar, and then what follows is technically what's known as the Psukei Zimra, literally the songs or the passages of praise. Section number 2. Im Siyyum Baruch Shamar Kodem Shesiyim HaChazan Oneh Acharav Amen. You'll love this one. If one finishes Baruch Shamar before the Shaliach Tzibor, Shaliach Tzibor means the cantor or the person leading the prayers on behalf of the congregation. So this morning it was me, and later it was Richard. Person said Baruch She'amar before the prayer leader finished Baruch She'amar. He should say Amen after the leader finishes. I want you to imagine a scenario. When would a person finish Baruch She'amar before the prayer leader? Two possibilities. When I say them, you say, "Oh my God, that makes sense." One, you are praying at a slightly faster pace than the prayer leader, which is virtually impossible when Richard is leading the davening. Oh, come on, that was funny. That was funny, and you all know it, okay? And it's only funny because it's true. Or, and you'll love this, just like in modern times, it's people are running a little late for synagogue. So you have finished before because you're praying silently, and you haven't come together praying as a minyan per se. And then when you have that minyan, the Shaliach Tzibor goes back to saying Baruch She'amar, and then you would say the blessing. Make sense to everybody? Number 3. Achar yishtabach yachol la'anot amen achar birchat atzmo. After yishtabach, at the end of Birkat Zimra, one may say Amen after his own blessing. One may say Amen after their own blessing. That should send bells off in your head. Do we normally say Amen after we make a blessing on our own? Is the general principle we do or the general principle that we don't? The general principle is that we don't say Amen to our own blessings. We make a blessing and somebody else says Amen to it, right? Or someone else makes a blessing and we say Amen. But generally not. And we're not going to get into it today, but there's a very interesting discussion of this. The very, very interesting discussion of this in the various sources. One of them, for example, the Mishnah Brura, which is a very wonderful commentary on the first section of the Shulchan Aruch, written by Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, also known as a Chafetz Chaim, in the early part of the 20th century, who writes the following: Ritzono lomar, what's really meant here, achar kol bracha miyuchedet shehu mevarech, or afilo achar shtei brachot, meaning that you can say a blessing you can say Amen after your own blessing if it's a special blessing. But as a general principle, we don't do this. So again, this ruling from the Shulchan Aruch is itself, well, I don't use it controversial, but is one that other rabbis over the years have suggested may not be the proper way of going about observing. Again, our general principle is that we do not recite a blessing, say Amen after a blessing that we make. Okay? Section number 4. Sarich lizaher melafsik b'dibur shematchil baruch shamar ad sof ha'amidah. One must be cautious to refrain from talking from the moment before Baruch Shamar till after he concludes the Amidah. Everybody come with me. Ashamnu. Many of you have seen this. You won't see it in our congregation, but many of you who have traveled to many synagogues will see a sign on the synagogue walls. Asur l'daber b'meshach hatfilah, or something like that. all speech is forbidden during the prayer service. Some of you have seen those in various synagogues you've been to. It's not just because we're trying to maintain a certain type of kavanah intensity, which of course is difficult to maintain when you're constantly involved in various conversations and what have you. But they're saying it's also forbidden. Now, what's the problem with making such a blanket statement? What's the problem? The problem is you can't get a minyan of Jews in a room together. I'm not trying to be funny or cute here. You all know what I'm trying to be funny or cute. But I'm not trying to be funny here. It's very difficult to get a minyan of 10 people together, 20 people together, 100 people together, and not have some conversation. It's very difficult. Even people who aren't very social will say, it's not, and indeed, I think of it when I'm leaving the service and the various gabbis are coming up to me during the services. We're discussing, should he get an aliyah? Should she get an aliyah? Did he have an aliyah last week? He had an aliyah last week. No, he didn't have an aliyah last week. Who should do musa? There is a certain amount of communication that goes on. Remember, we don't live in a monastic order. We are social beings. And part of the attraction to coming in person in synagogue is to be in the company with other Jews, not just for prayer, but for social interaction. Now forget inside the synagogue. All of you have used Zoom at one point or another, or regularly, for religious services during the pandemic. Have you not? How many of you ever sent a chat message to someone during the service? Just by a show of hands. Okay? Yeah, never. You're a much better Jew than the rest of us are, I must tell you. So why do we do that? Because even in the experience of Zoom, where it's very easy not to talk to anybody, we still need to connect. And Steve, let's say nothing about the emojis that you and I sent back and forth. Okay. So, the Shulchan Aruch says, but at the same time, we understand the value, right? Because we know that the very act of talking or sending chats does interfere with the intensity of prayer. It's a balance, is it not? When I was in Israel last month, I went to a synagogue, a Sephardic synagogue by orientation, and there must have been 4 of these signs on each of the walls of the synagogue. Yet the Gabbai and the Baal Koreh, the Gabbai and the Torah reader, literally had an argument on the beam about who should get one of the aliyot. Okay? It happens. Now in the Shulchan Aruch, one of the beauties of the Shulchan Aruch, which was ultimately, or in essence, a law code written for Sephardic Jews living in the north of Israel in the early part of the 16th century and spread throughout the Sephardic and Eastern Jewish world. A century later, it makes its way to Europe, where a rabbi named the Ramah, Rabbi Moshe Isserles, realized what a brilliant and amazing work it was. And instead of coming up with a new law code, wrote a series of emendations, Hagahot we call them in Hebrew, adding to this ultimately Sephardic law code the practices and rulings of the Ashkenazi commentators in Europe that sometimes differed slightly from those rulings, to make it a law code that all Jewry could embrace. And indeed, to this day, it's really one of the greatest works ever written in Jewish law. The Shulchan Aruch itself by Rabbi Joseph Caro, and what's called the emendations of Rabbi Moshe Isserles, which is known as the Mapah. Shulchan Aruch is the tablecloth. It's kind of playing off each other. And he writes the following on this verse. And even if it is for the sake of performing a mitzvah, one may not talk between Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach. What does that add to our discussion? I'm not trying to be silly here. It means that talking in services was no less an issue back in the day than it is in our time. And it's kind of raising the bar, saying, not just you shouldn't talk, but even if it's doing, really, in the observance of a mitzvah, you should not talk. But here he's limiting it to, or especially limiting it to, Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, as opposed to the Shulchan Aruch itself, which takes it all the way to the Amidah blessing. Now, later in various other commentators, in other commentaries, the question is asked, well, what happens if somebody comes up to you and says, how are you? Or what's going on today? Or how's your mom? The question is that knowing it would be impolite to ignore them, what do you do in those situations? And it's interesting how the various commentators address that particular issue. He goes on to say, now, in between, Bein HaMizmarim ha'elu sho'el mipnei ha'kvod u'meshiv shalom l'chol adam. Now, in between the various psalms, after Baruch She'amar, when we start reciting the Tehillim that take us from Baruch She'amar through Yishtabach, he says, in between the psalms, one may ask about another's welfare out of respect for that person and reply to any person. And in the middle of one of the psalms, he may ask of another's welfare and may reply out of respect. It's almost like a recommendation. It's okay, you really shouldn't be speaking, but if you do, make sure you finish one of the psalms, ask or return a greeting, and then go on with the service. Again, it's an idea, and again, even though we're not always so great about it in our own personal lives, and I'd like to think of myself as a good example of observance to the congregation, but I'm not exactly a role model for this aspect of the service. There's something very interesting here. It's saying if you're going to speak during the service, okay, comma, which we all know is going to happen when you put a bunch of Jews in a room together, even in the experience of prayer, comma, make sure you finish one of the Tehillim, one of the Psalms, then talk, finish that brief conversation, and move on. And there's a lot to be said for that if you think about it. An idea of trying to maintain the integrity of the prayer service and our own kavanah, our own religious intensity, amidst a situation that lends itself to communication. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Okay, now I want you to turn in your Siddurim, if you would, to page 60, the very end of the first paragraph. You all see that? The very end. Yachid chol no, I'm sorry, no, not there. I'm sorry. The top of page 62. Okay? And you see on the top of the end of the first line on the top, there's a little star there, right? Ki kol Elohei hamim elolim, and then the Siddur says you should pause. V'Hashem shamayim v'aretz. Okay? The ruling from the Shulchan Aruch. Tzarich lahafsik bein elolim uvein v'Hashem shamayim asa. One must pause. One must literally take a breath between the words foreign gods, Elohei ha'amim elim, but Hashem made the heavens. Hashem shamayim asa. Again, anybody ever wonder, you've all seen that before, anybody wonder what it's doing there? All kinds of places, but this is a halachically driven pause to make a distinction between foreign gods and their limitations and our God, who's just better. Now, section number 7 deals with a series of verses within the Ashrei prayer. Again, friends, we're going to, for those who have to get to work, we're going to finish within the next 3 minutes, okay? One should, literally, one should really focus one's heart, meaning one should pay special attention when, amidst the general high intensity level that we are trying to establish when we are conducting prayer in the beginning, in any case, but we should especially focus on several verses within the Amidah, within the Ashrei prayer. Among them, the verse, Poteach et yadecha, umasbir l'chol chai ratzon. You open your hand and you provide the means for all that are who are alive. Some of you may have ever seen in certain communities, and some of our members, people will really lift their hands or open their hands during this particular verse. It's just another way of acknowledging that. You've heard me say 1,000 times over the years, we don't like to rank the mitzvot, we don't like to choose one section over another, but there are verses, and there's no doubt of this, where we are directed to raise our level of kavanah, of religious intensity, and this is one of them. Number eight. I want you to think about the way we conduct, especially when we're davening Shacharit together. We tend to move quickly through this section of the service, do we not? How many of you remember Mr. Suleiman Nabatian of blessed memory? I think the fastest car in the world can go from 0 to 60 in about 3 or 4 seconds. That's how fast he used to daven the Pesukei Zimra service in the morning. Remember, Harold, remember? We're used to saying these psalms rapidly. It's the Shacharit service that we take a little bit more, the Shacharit service that is the post-Yishtabach section of the service that we normally pray at a more leisurely pace. Nonetheless, the ruling from the Shulchan Aruch is Ein omrim hazmirot b'miritza ki ein benachat. So we ought not say this section, these Tehillim, fast or hurriedly, but rather benachat, which I'm going to translate as a more leisurely pace. Does that work? Benachat, a more leisurely pace. Which leads me to 2 conclusions. One, we need to think about what that means. And especially, if I may get personal for a second, the Cantor and I are always under a lot of pressure. What's that pressure? To maintain the integrity of the service, as we understand it, and also to move things along. It's a balance. Now, there's no doubt that balance was also in flux 500 years ago and 1,000 years ago. There's no doubt about that. So I just point that out without reconciling it for you today. So I'm going to say there's always a balance between, not saying between the leadership of the prayer service and the lay community, but rather that balance between moving the service along so it's not overly long, because that can be what's called a tirkat tzibur, a difficult for the congregation. But at the same time, make a statement that each and every prayer is significant. That's why our rabbis of blessed memory put it in there. And lastly, number 9, and I'll ask you just to turn in your Siddurim to that prayer. Where is it here? Turn to page, middle of 64. The middle of the page, Mizmor LaTodah, the 100th Psalm, says the Psalm of Thanksgiving, this particular one, should always be said in a melody. Yesh la'omro b'nigina, that it's good to say this with a little extra music, if you will, just to sing it out. Because in the future, all of the Tehillim, all of this section will be canceled, except for this particular psalm. Now, I'm not exactly sure if in the future refers to Yemot HaMashiach, in the time of the Messiah. It is interesting, though, that in terms of the prayer service, the only psalm that will be maintained will be among the shortest that exist. I'm just putting that out there. And then later, the Ramah basically says, these are the days that you don't say it, which correspond to the little note there of the days that these prayers are omitted. And that concludes this section number 51 of Shulchan Aruch. Maybe Hashem's will, we have the opportunity to study Shulchan Aruch together many more times in the future. And I thank you all for coming today. I'm going to invite you all to please rise to the Kaddish Rabbanan, waiting outside, which is being sponsored by John Levinson today in honor of his birthday and in honor of the congregation. John, we thank you very much. And thank you all for coming to study today. Firstborn, you are now released. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, B'olma divarach Yerutei v'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'miru amein. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach, la'olam u'lomei olmaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, Shmei d'kudasha brichu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'olma v'yimiru amein. Al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan v'al Talmidei Hon, v'al kol Talmidei Hon, v'al kol mandoiskim v'yaraita, diviatra hadein v'divachol atar v'atar, Yehei lachon ulachon shtam rabba, hina v'hista v'rachamin, v'chayin arishin, v'zone revichei, u'forkanam min kadam v'hon v'shmaya v'ara v'yimramein. Yehei shlam rabba min shmaya, v'chayim tovim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimramein. Oseh shalom v'mirmav, u'barachamav yaseh shalom, aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimramein. Welcome everybody, those who are with us in the sanctuary, those who are with us on live stream, we welcome you. We want to wish you a Chag Sameach, a happy Passover. We look forward to seeing you again tonight, 6:15 on Zoom. Tomorrow morning at 9:30 here in the synagogue. Please bring your Sidurim forward. If you have not yet sold your Chametz, let's do it now. And David Goodman, I got yours. Did you get my text yesterday? Oh, yes, you did. I'm sorry. Okay. With all due respect, you aren't the only person who's busy this time of the year. Hold on. I'm not pretending I'm as busy, but on the other hand, David, I was informed I'm getting a big refund, so I'm lucky than some of your clients. Thank God for proper withholding. Good to see you.
Yeah, but there's a reason for it. There's an inflammatory something going on. It could be, it could be post
Hi, good morning. How are you? I'm sorry, I'm just finishing the Siyyum when you texted me. Okay. No, not definitely not. Definitely not. I'm glad you're on the Siyyum. How did I do? Thank you. Okay, look, Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning, we're at 9:30 in the synagogue. I hope we'll see you. That's correct, okay? Correct. All right. See you later. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Hi. Hello. Did you like seeing me? Let me see your dress. Oh, hold on. Say, I want to take a picture of you in your beautiful. Stay right there. I want to take a picture of you in your beautiful dress. How nice. You look beautiful. You got a spring event today? Let me see your beautiful dress. Stay right there. Beautiful. So am I gonna see you later? We're gonna play?
Yeah.
Will that be so fun?
The girls have the spring tea at school.
Spring tea. All right, very nice. Well, when we get home, we can have some spring berries.
Sweet Mariana, the Chinese children, the 4-year-olds who made that blazer, did not wrap it that nicely.
Sam,
Yes, Dad.
did you end up bringing Chinese food home on Monday when I saw you?
Oh, I did.
Yes.
I did.
I bet everybody was very happy with that.
It was a hit with Rena and Mariana and me. Not so much with Adira, but Adira did like all those soups that I got. I got a lot of different types of soups.
On Sunday, I hadn't had Chinese food in ages. Since Grandma's party, before that, in 6 months. Aviva brought me Chinese food. I had a little Sunday, Monday, and last night I finished it. A wonderful way to close out the from the. I'm in synagogue right now. That's correct. That's correct. You want to see my synagogue? I am. Hold on one second. Here, I'm going to show you. Hold on one second.
Very springy, very nice.
Can you see? Can you see the? You know, the lights aren't on. Can you see the arc?
Why is all of the lights
Oh, because we had the service and the custodians turned off the lights for me. Okay.
The lights are on you.
I'm actually going home. I'm actually going home right now. I'm actually going home right now. So I will.
Away your Torah.
What's that?
Are you putting away your Torah?
So I'll put it away, but you'll see it tomorrow when you come to synagogue with me. Okay? All right. Listen, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to see you guys around 1 or 2 o'clock. All right? All right. Very good. I'll see you guys later. Okay?
Love you, Dad.
Love you. Bye, guys.